To see the dialogue sort of unfold, you know, in what way do the different guest curators, selectors, powers, you could say, how through our work, I would say that we are trying to create a space, like we discussed a little bit also before, a space of experience where we call them platforms, but it's not necessarily a platform per se, but it's creating a space where exchange of knowledge and of information can take place, and not just for the sake of information, but for the sake of what it is that establishes a space where people can gather around certain issues.
It's also challenging to work with a museum, but it has a collection which we are not familiar with because of language barriers, you know, communication. And I think in general, you know, the art world is, I would say, quite Western oriented. So, and for us this was quite unknown.
We used to refer, or we are referring to that way of relating to that collection as a discussion piece. So somehow you build through these works, you build relationships with the work, but also among each other. You know, you sort of activate your own memory. So what does a collaboration mean? You know, if you are speaking about art and about artworks and about your encounters with different events and artworks and performances, and how do these different things relate to how you develop yourself as an artist or as a collaboration in our case. So like when we made this selection of 150, we were also asking ourselves, like many artists here also ask themselves, or people, like, who are we to decide what is this? You know, if we select 150 works, like, why would the public care if that's maybe a discussion between us? No, we make a specific selection because of our collective history somehow, but what would other people do? No, maybe younger people, or maybe people from another totally other generation, of people from a totally other background, you know. So different professional backgrounds, maybe also sometimes different cultural backgrounds, and certainly different generational backgrounds, to sort of also investigate the value of selection, the value of a collection for now, but also maybe for people in the further future. How relevant is that? No, that was in a way the question. So what I find interesting is how you can sort of, from the individual objects or the leftovers or the stories, how you can sort of excavate not only the past reasons, for example, for building a collection, but also, and maybe more importantly, of what that could do, not what it could mean, but what it could do today, or what it does today. The reason why we go into this kind of dialogue, certain situations, is also to think aloud, no? To express your thoughts aloud, and to exchange about these ideas of what it could do today, or what it does today. And my expectation would, and that's also why we very simply, it's in a way very straightforward, put up these interviews, that you actually create through these different talking heads all these different ideas that relate to the same issue, to the same question, which is a collection, a museum, an archive of objects, where what we maybe as societies take for granted, or we think it's that yes, we should do that, and yes, we should also do that in the future. But I would expect from such projects that we, as the first persons, but then once we do that, we are also public, basically, and public that comes then after to see what all this is, that they also start thinking or questioning or speculating, why do we do this?
I think it's very interesting to hear how people analyze works, and then how they do maybe relate to themselves, because it's totally different each time. And I think that's for us also very interesting to really understand how people see art and what does it do to them, because normally you don't hear these voices.
Recent investigations, were that people, the public, on an average base, spends 3 seconds in front of a painting, and then they go to the, or any photograph or whatever, no? So they look 3 seconds and they go on. So if as artists, if we can create situations where people spend more time, basically. But once you spend more time, or maybe when you come back one more time, or when you come back one more time again, and you see, for example, his photographs in another context than where you know. So if that changes, no, then actually works may grow, or you can sort of grow with works. I think it's really important that all of us, and it's not only in this space, but also outside in the street, that people don't think too much for granted, because it's gone before you know somehow. So that's maybe my reason to do these things.
And the title came from Ramon Chavez. His parents were married the same way. His father was in South America, and his mother was in Europe. And through Spain or something, through war in South America, they couldn't be together, and they wanted to get married. So they were married, we call it by the glove. So that's married by powers. It's in a way...
it's a delegation of the marriage. You know? Yeah. There's somebody who says yes there and somebody who says yes there. Yeah. And there's witnesses, and that's sort of okay. No, that's enough. So it's really marrying by delegation.
So he gave the powers, temporarily he gave the powers to another to say yes. You know, the other one is there and he said, do you want to marry me? The one says yes. And then the other one...
So it's really performative.
Yeah.
I think it could be interesting because that allows people to see the dialogue sort of unfold. You know, in what way do the different guest curators, selectors, powers, you could say, how do they relate to the collection other than we, and how does that sort of also get into conversation with each other? Not literally, but they follow each other in time. So, and there are 3 works that stay, which we call the parameter works, or the works that you can sort of hold on to, or that we hold on to somehow, that's maybe as a form of a hunch that somehow form, let's say, an underlayment that others can either relate or not relate at all to, in relationship also to what they choose. And so these 3 markings will continuously be there, but they will be there in different configurations because the rest of the works are totally different every time. For me, it's really important what art can do, and not so much that I don't believe so much in that the artist can change the world. Sometimes there's a lot of pressure on artists because they are sort of the truth tellers or something, or they bring the message or whatever. No. And I don't believe in that. I don't think that artists can change the world. There was some years ago, a guy said to us, like, artists don't change the world, it's people that change the world. And art may sort of bring them ideas to, you know, start to think of how they can do that. But art is not the answer to it. No, it would be really ridiculous to ask that from art or from artists.
It still will be a place where people can freely think and express themselves, you know, because that's also becoming more limited in the surrounding outside in public space, that you can't do, or you can't say, or you can't take a photograph near the Blue House. You know, you were saying, are we living in democracy? And then in a museum, it's maybe, and also we see it as some sort of public space because people are coming. There's, in principle, no limitation. You know, there's a free flow of thoughts and expression and discussion going up and down through the artworks and the visitors. So maybe in the future it will be becoming even more important than it is.
Yeah. And if you sort of maybe describe it as some kind of a niche space, because it's not huge, even if a museum is big, and then art can help with that, or can sort of create these kind of weird environments where maybe things are different than outside somehow.